Welcome back to this session. We have again with us Professor Gopa Bharadwaj, faculty at Psychology Department, Delhi University. Earlier session we were discussing about the organizations. What are organizations meant for? And now we are going to talk about organizational development. Before we move on to OD, I request the students who are present at several regional centers to raise certain questions to make it more interactive. Before we proceed to the next topic, I just have a query. This is regarding the design which you were explaining about the centralization and decentralization. Can you just tell us what are the limitations regarding centralized structure or the advantages, and also what are the advantages in decentralization structure and the limitations?
All right, you see, it's a very relevant question. Centralization is basically where you are making the process captured in a limited locale.
Yeah, please, Jabalpur, please come on the line, please.
Hello, ma'am. Actually, I want to know that what is the technostructure development and what is the use of it in organization?
Okay, technostructural development and use of it in the organization. Meaning that we have various technologies, all right, and like for example, how do you process the reward system? How do you process the motivation? How do you understand? And then how do you relate it to people's ideas, their attitudes, their existence in the organization? The whole idea has come from a system that was way back designed in UK known as techno-social system, socio-technology, where in a mine it was found that, in a coal mine, it was found that introducing a system which reduced the dependence on human beings and put in machinery created a low down morale. People started absenting, and the whole idea that structure part, the structural part, that is people's own understanding of their position vis-a-vis the organization, must be going hand in hand with the technologies that are introduced. I'll give you a simpler example that way back in late 60s, when computers were introduced in State Bank of India, there was a massive strike because computers were perceived as culminating into downsizing, that people will be losing their job. This is the structural part, losing the job, reduction in the number of jobs. And techno was the computer. But today, you see, without computers, the banks don't function. They have created more jobs. So this relationship between technical and the structural has to be well understood, well delineated and put into practice. People's expectations must be understood about technology and their knowledge about the technology. When these two match, then only we can go for designing, developing an organization. Is that clear? You have any queries? Jabalpur?
Okay, we may come back to it. I think we were talking about the centralization and...
Yeah, we were talking, let's get back to the centralization and decentralization. Centralization, you see, I told you that the entire process is held captive by a select few. So, this select few must be a very highly empowered group, but the question comes that do they have that kind of vision which filters through the different layers of the organization? If that is so, then the developmental processes can be ensured, because whatever processes are dreamt, designed and put into practice will be understood across the different layers. From top, like if it is a mythical pyramidal structure, the top takes the decisions, tops decides all the policies. How it is filtered and understood and implemented, and people appreciate their ability to appreciate and that sense of achievement created. But there is a failure in this, because the entire sense of achievement, this paradigm, may be just in the vision of those people who are at the top, who are at the central position. So they may not be able to understand that their vision gets distorted at a lower level or at a middle level. So this is the problem. But the responsibility can be pinpointed and they can make renewal processes much easier. It's a quicker process. It is well organized and well delineated, but the impact cannot be controlled. In the decentralized, the participation is there, it takes time, that is one big handicap, but it is agreed upon by the collective. So when it is implemented, the process is much smoother than when it is coming by the force, by the power of the select few who have their hold on the different processes that are there in the organization. So this is the basic difference, that the entire domain may look very bright when it is centralized, but the implementation may be totally diffused. In the decentralized, the domain may look very ambiguous, but as the clarity is gained, the implementation becomes much more smoother and much more practicable. So this is, I mean, if I want to put it in a capsule, this is how I will be approaching it. All right, any other question? Okay, now we go back to the definition which we have started, and the first point, let me just remind you, is talking about that any development design is to be supported by all means by the top boss, because they hold the key to resources, whether financial or any other kind. So that support has to be there, because the top management itself must be convinced that this is the right kind of scheme, project, or whatever shape it takes. Then it has to be a long range effort. One is, this long range effort can be bidirectional. One is towards problem solving. As I had discussed earlier also, the gaps that are there, the problems that are being created are to be tackled with a long range view, long term view, because if you take the short term, then the problem may be solved. It will be a firefighting, but not fire reduction. So problem has to be solved with a long range in mind. The second long range effort is to be focused on the renewal processes, organizational renewal. And organizational renewal can be in various ways, through technological renewal, through vision renewal, through re-engineering, restructuring, a process that is put into place by giving a new direction. Already held beliefs, assumptions are renewed for a better purpose and better understood. So the long range is just not an empty term, it has to be either having a problem solving approach or renewal approach, that there is no problem, but we need to renew ourselves. We need to look at the processes in a different way. Then we include in the definition is that collaborative diagnosis. Now let me explain this. Collaborative diagnosis means what? You find out what is going on and what can be done to make it better. Now here is the term that has to be understood is the collaborative. It comes from the collaboration between the management and the employees. So diagnosis, the doctor, is just not a doctor-patient relationship where the doctor decides what is wrong. It is the patient's involvement, participation in getting the diagnosis put into place, and there the holistic approach has to be taken. People's involvement, people's sense of ownership has to be there in this collaborative diagnosis. This is a very important part of the definition of organizational development. Then next is improving organizational culture. Now what is culture? Culture is, in a very simplistic way, is the set of values, norms, beliefs, ethics that has been put into place through ages, through socialization. So organizational culture is more vague but more powerful. It's a notion which is full with power, which holds people behavior. So organizational culture, because you just can't say in the name of development keep on expanding, then it becomes unwieldy, because people's involvement gets lost. They don't understand why should they invest themselves into these kinds of efforts. The culture will convince people that their investment is not only for the organization but for the society, for the individual, for the family. So that is a holistic way of understanding the culture, and then it's part of the organizational development process. Then it is in the culture, in the diagnosis, we have team building. The teams are just not groups. Teams are very focused. You can formally include the teams, make the teams. There are informal teams. There are temporary teams. There are permanent teams. So what kind of teamwork is going on? That is a part of organizational development. Because without teamwork, there can't be any development. And related factor that you see here is the intergroup culture. No group or no team works in isolation. We have to have a collaboration. You cannot say, you cannot be partial that this group has contributed maximally. Okay, it may have, but the sharing, the caring, the ownership comes only if there is intergroup culture. If one group excels well, it just doesn't get restricted by its glory. It is shared across. Everybody becomes proud of that group and they share the end results together. So next time another group becomes successful, the whole organizational framework becomes a party to that success. That is what is brought in through intergroup culture. That is also an integral part, very dominant part of organizational development. Then there is sometimes facilitators are required, some third party intervention, where the organization, this happens only in case the organization is not able to gather its wits to make things smoother. So they need somebody who can be taken as totally impartial, totally objective, and help. This is where the consultant, the counselor, peacemaker, change agents all these people come in, and that is the facilitation. The term is not empty. Facilitation is where you are able to help people gather their own skills, their competencies, and put it into practice. The skills and competencies are already there. It requires a intervention from outside which helps in putting it to the best use. And then we have certain theoretical assumptions. I would like to tell you something about it. The whole notion of organizational development comes from one social psychologist known as Kurt Lewin, and he has given his action research, which we will be clarifying little later. The whole paradigm of change requires 3 stages. The first stage is known as unfreezing. Take up the metaphor of a refrigerator, the old refrigerators that we used to have, not the recent ones, where you had to defrost it. And while you were defrosting it, you had to put the entire mechanism shut. And you could just discover that some piece of chocolate or some piece of vegetable coming out. These are the disturbance creators. The unfreezing part is what you already hold and you are being exposed to that. Alright, so first part is where a total clarification of what was happening, that is unfreezing. Then moving. You restart the refrigerator, you move away from the earlier stage, and in that movement what happens? Whatever you wanted are retained and whatever you didn't want are discarded. So this is the basic understanding of moving, that you leave the unwanted past and take away the wanted part and continue. And then refreezing, because change, moving is a continuous dynamic flux. So organization cannot be, any organization, any individual cannot be in the flux all the time. So one needs that kind of establishment of stability, which is expressed in refreezing. From unfreezing, moving to refreezing, these 3 stages, they are required for any development, any change to take place. Refreezing, from refreezing one goes back to unfreezing. So it's a continuous cycle which keeps on helping the organization go towards growth, development, renewal, whatever you may call it, is going through this process continuously. This is the basic theoretical assumption behind organizational development. Whether you take Steinberg, McGregor, anybody, any theoretical perspective, the basics are in this change process, change paradigm. Now, traditionally, change has been seen from a static perspective. Let's examine that too, because I told you that when you are unfreezing, you are going into what was there. So the traditionality must be examined. Here you have the exposition and propagation. First thing, exposition means where you are able to get into the nitty-gritty details and expose them, make them transparent. And propagation is continuity, that whatever things you want to retain, you do that and leave behind whatever was there. Like you propagate a plant from a tree. Okay, so you take the help of the root propagation. First you expose and then the roots come out. In the seeds also the same thing happens. So same metaphor can be used for the organization, but that was traditional way of looking at, because this is a very static way, a continuous, and which doesn't have any space for change. Then another way of traditionally changing is resource allocation. That suppose money is required. Who requires, who needs it most? So give it. So the production department comes that we need new machinery, give us the funds. the research and development comes, we need more things, so give it to them. So this is changing resource allocation. Resources remain static, but the allocation becomes different. Somebody gets more, somebody gets less, like that. So this is within a static framework, that whatever you had, you have to work within that, and you keep on changing who gets what. Then another way of looking at traditional change is transformation, where you are training people to improve upon their efficiency. You are able to empower them, enable them, enhance their competencies, their efficiency, so that they are able to produce more. And this was very well seen in certain efforts traditionally, like the man-machine systems, where they improve the machine ergonomics. All these are efficiency-oriented transformations. And Morale, like human relation movement, if you have read it, where the people getting together is morale development. But that is very traditional, because at the end of the day, it is the production of the organization. What do you produce? So this is one thing. Then output, which is measured in terms of quantity, quality, market share, customers. You change that. You sometimes I hear many organizations said that, okay, our customers are not there. I mean, they are quite fed up. So give them new product. Or sometimes if you are making, say, in the garment, fabric garment organization, you say, okay, we have been making clothes for the teenagers, now let us target the customer in terms of the kids. So we go into kids apparel. And in the West, I have seen that they are also now targeting older people, that this is meant for you, this is meant for your comfort. So you are trying to enhance or change the shape of the output by changing the quantity, the quality, the market share and customers. This is again a traditional change. Then constituencies. Another change that can be brought into as per the traditional paradigm is employees. Who are your employees? Internal employees, some these days virtual employees, all such things, that you focus on employees. That is, give them more money, give them better facilities. So that constituency is for the sake of organization, it is done. It is a change but not development in the true sense. The owners. Now we have the confederation of industries, where the owners have come together, where they see what can be done to better themselves, to have more profit. Then suppliers, obviously, who are your suppliers? It is China or India or whosoever. So there the change is required, but it's not development. Again, let me remind you, creditors, it is World Bank or the your neighborhood Lala who is coming and helping you with funds, and community. This is another thing where how do you, like for example the environmental issues, they come up. The community part is more dominant in bringing change. And then another traditional way of looking at the change is recycling. That whatever products you had, you put them in a new format. This can be a survival strategy, that you recycle the same old things in a new way, that is repackaging them, renaming them, and all these efforts they go on. Then growth, especially the vertical growth. You keep on expanding, you in different ways. Then return on investment, ROI. How much return is there? You try to invest less and expect more returns by marketing strategies and so many other things, and enhance profitability. These are the measures, these are the indicators of traditional change.
Can you explain a little bit more on this ROI, return on investment?
ROI means return on investment, that if you invest 5 rupees and you get 7 rupees, then this 2 rupees is, in the simplistic way, is the return on investment, but it has a deeper meaning. If you invest, I have seen many organizations do it, that suppose they provide the schooling for the children of the employees. Okay, so they take care of the school fees and they take care of the education, they give money for buying books and all that. These are the actually investment. What are they expecting? They are expecting a return in terms of organizational commitment from the employee. So this can be at a notional value, this can be at a very material, tangible value. So you give them a raise of 20% and expect that their productivity will go on 20% or 21%. But this is a myth, because satisfied workers are not productive workers. So return on investment is a very mechanical way of looking at change. It's not a development. Okay, now let us proceed a little more. How the OD, because we are now focusing on OD, what is the history? I told you that it all started with Levin. This laboratory training, what he found out, that by changing certain structural support, you can bring in more involvement, functionality in the participants. What he tried to show, that his famous leadership studies were done in a ship. Ship was taken as a laboratory where the training was given to the people who were just plain sailors and their captains. The different kinds of leaders, like autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire, all these leadership, they were developed for the sake of improving upon, renewing the forces that are existent in the organization. So this was the laboratory training system which was put in place by Levin and his associates. Later developments are T groups. T groups are small groups where it was found that it's not possible to handle people's orientations, people's psyche in large segments. So small groups, people who are able to interact with each other, and the development, you see a gradual change from the techno to human beings. T groups, small group research, small group training was a main focus where people were trained in small groups how to interact with each other, how to develop the leadership skills, how people can be involved, how people can be motivated. And then one major contribution which is a part of organizational development is action research, which is mainly attributable to Levin and his associates, where I'll go into details of this. The action research is here and now. What is happening at a given position with a given group. So this is one technology, one method by which people can be told how they are functioning. The data is given right there, and then next process is started, and this is a more dynamic method, and it's a very important way of developing organizations, renewing organizations. And last one is survey, which has developed later, which gives you hardcore data, which was there in the past, and you can make your strategies, you develop the perspectives based on this hardcore data which is coming from the survey results. So in the history of organizational development, if you see a gradual development towards understanding the employees, the organization, its structure, the nation, the society, the international context, the gradual development is from the laboratory training, that you select a few people and give them training, and then that centralized part comes to survey, where a lot of people are involved, to action research, where actually what is happening, not getting diffused in the total collective, but a specific group is target, and then that specific group becomes the trainer for the rest. So this is where how the historically the OD, organizational development, developed, flourished, and now becomes an integral part of any organization. Any questions? Now we come to certain underlying assumptions and values. You had already understood that traditionally you cannot take change, a mechanical change, as development. So we must understand the underlying portion of your iceberg. This is what I am trying to help you understand here. What are the underlying assumptions and values which are behind any OD intervention, any OD project? First assumption is about people. People are driven toward growth and development in supportive and challenging environment. Please understand this. People are not driven by or towards growth in empty environment. The organization has to provide a supportive and challenging environment. So the onus is on both people as well as the organization. Any development cannot happen without the participation from the people who are in the organization, outside the organization too. Alright. Now if Tatas and Birlas and Ambanis are showing that there is a growth possibility, they have to provide succor to the nation, support to the nation. If they want the people of the nation to be challenged, to be driven towards growth, they have to provide that support, that kind of environment which is conducive to maintain people's drive towards growth and development. This is a very important underlying assumptions without which no development can take place. Secondly, the assumption that you must have while taking up any development project is that people have constructive energy. Constructive energy, desire and competence to attain organizational goals. Nobody is without that constructive energy, once the person is inside or outside. There is a desire to grow. Everybody, this is the basic assumption about human nature. Once the person is a part of the organization, we can take the nation as an organization, it has to have that kind of faith that people have the energy, constructive energy, they can contribute, they can create something which was not there earlier, and they are not just empty vessels, they have that competence, because whenever they have energy, we have to take it for granted that they also have the competence. This is one indicator of trust and faith in people, without which development projects are difficult to put into practice. So have that assumption that people have the energy, the competence and the desire to grow, to attain the organizational goals. They are not selfish beings, they just don't want money. Alright. And then another important assumption is about the people's social nature. Alright. People are social animals. Every human being is a social animal. And how do you know that? Most people wish to be accepted and interact cooperatively with group. This is another indicator of putting into practice the term trust, honesty and faith. That people would like to be group members and contribute as accepted members, not as outsiders. It is continued. Another assumption is related to what was said earlier, that group members assist each other with effective leadership and member behavior. These days I was just watching Indian Idol, and I find this time there is a marked change, that there is a feeling of fellowship, feeling of team membership. This is where the group develops, though there is an intense competition, and they have shown that along with the intense competition, it's not jealousy. It is a process where people are assisting each other, and there has to be an effective leadership. Here is for the organization a lesson that if our people are together, then they must be given some direction for achievement and growth. Alright, and there the related factor is that if you suppress it, that is, suppressed feelings and attitudes affect adversely. If you do not have some support, some nurturance of people's desire to be accepted members, to be able to show their competence, then they will suppress their feelings, and it is going to affect negatively not only their own performance but the performance of the organization. Then another very, very important fact which people give lip service but don't have much faith on is interpersonal trust, support and cooperation usually are lower than desired. In any formal organization, if you just take it for granted that trust will be there, it is not there. But people are ready to trust. So, for the development purposes, for renewal purposes, for growth purposes, what you need to do is that understand that trust, and that is why these days people are talking about corporate social responsibility. People are talking about organizational citizenship behavior. These are indicators that you cannot take anything for granted. Though the trust is there, but how much you put into practice, how much you make it contribute towards organizational processes, that depends on its developmental perspective. So nothing can be taken for granted. And lastly, we have very important aspect that all the solutions, most of the problems are not solved by the central body, the top management. This is where the difference between the centralized and decentralized comes. In centralized, everybody thinks that the top management has all the solutions, which I don't have. No human being has. So, to put them into practice, to make them more effective, to make them value-oriented, goal-oriented, problem solving must have a transactional nature. Now, what does this mean? What is transactional? Transactional, in the simplest term, is you give and you take. You give to others, you take from others. Same thing happens with the other. That person gives to you and also takes away. And there is a meaning that is attached in this give and take process. Transact. You know what you are giving, how much you are giving. Giving is always losing out. So what is that sense of loss and what is that sense of gain? There has to be a counterbalancing. Because any organization cannot expect that once you have paid the employees, they are going to keep on working for you. Giving, that is also a sense of loss. Because when one is expending the energy, that is a loss. What does the person gain? Of course, salary is there. But what is the other thing? This is where the values, the culture, the skills, people's involvement, people's satisfaction, people's energy, re-energization, putting their competences into practice, they come up. This is the transactional nature, synergistic relationship, that you draw your energy from each other. This is another very important aspect of solving problems, that solutions should not be one-way process. Problem solving should not be one-way process. Many times we tell the student, okay, you don't know this, okay, I give you some material, read it. But how much the student has read, how much the student can contribute back to us, very few of us care for that. This is what is happening in organizations. Employees have a problem, management says here is the solution. But is the employee ready to understand the management's effort, management's contribution and his or her own contribution? That is a primary question. It's just not mechanical, it has to be transactional. Any questions?
I think we'll stop here for this session. We'll come back to you at 1 o'clock. Meanwhile, I request you all to raise certain questions in the next session. It was very interesting about the organizational development. We'll continue again. Thank you.